So our brain is filtering out everything, but it doesn't mean it's not processing. Our brain is processing everything. So we need to get people out of that sympathetic overload and get them into parasympathetics. And that's what we can do. Anyone who needs to reboot their brain or balance their brain can use BrainTap, but you got to do something to maintenance your stress and keep your brain going.
Welcome everyone to our Doctors Networking group, Polish Your Life. Today I'm very excited because it's a very special episode. I'm here with amazing guests and we're going to be talking about probably the biggest innovation in stress management that you ever heard about. The innovation is called BrainTap. Maybe you already saw a video that we recorded with Dr. Patrick Porter. We talked about BrainTap benefits, what it can do for you, what is the science behind it. It is very impressive, absolutely amazing. It is known all over the world right now, and we're going to find out a little bit more today, but we're going to find out from the provider's perspective, because as we are a group of providers, we want to know what questions providers have. I am here with three amazing providers. We are here with Dr. Todd Johnson-Baugh, who is a chiropractor in Columbia, Maryland, at Dubs Rehab Center. We have the amazing and famous Ryan Diener, owner and founder of Holistic Health Associates. He's going to represent the group of acupuncturists. And we have our fantastic guest, very famous innovator and inventor of BrainTap technology, Dr. Patrick Porter.
You know what? I remember watching you all's video and you talked a lot about the concepts of big words I heard. And then let's bring it in. I heard words like neuroplasticity, epigenetics. What were some other words that were used with that?
Well, we use the word entrainment. A lot of people don't understand that one either. So those are
probably
three of the
just
big ones.
kind of get us kind of up to snuff real quick. And then as a chiropractor, I know I want to learn more about the sympathetic and parasympathetics, because a lot of times when I see a C1 or C2 adjustment and it keeps coming back, I feel like that person can be in sympathetic overdrive. Or sometimes when we're adjusting the tailbone, person's in that fight or flight mode, and they kind of metaphysically and physically tuck that tailbone in. And so I really want to hear about BrainTap as it applies to that, and then what kind of patient can do it. Okay.
Well, first of all, anyone who needs to reboot their brain or balance their brain can use BrainTap. If they have a problem with lights, some people have a problem with flashing lights. Like if you play video games, you'll notice on there it says if you have epilepsy, you don't want to use a video game. This is flashing lights. So, some people have a problem with that, maybe 1 out of every 200 or something like that. But everybody else can benefit from it. Let's start with number one, neuroplasticity, because that's a big one out there right now. Everybody on this call knows about neuroplasticity, whether it's using acupuncture, pressure, or different points, because what you're doing is you're moving energy. So we're talking about neuroplasticity because we're talking about the nervous system, 70% of it being in the brain. So to put it in perspective, if like Mike here probably speaks 2 languages, right? He speaks his native tongue and then he speaks English, where I was brought up in Michigan. So I speak English and I speak poor English. So there's no, when I went to college, I had to learn Spanish to get through freshman year. But those people that have learned 2 languages, they're very fortunate because they have something where their neural networks stay active and awake. If not, the brain typically shuts it down. So what happens is they used to think that once we were at a certain age, like 7 or 8 years old, our brain was pretty much fixed. But what we now know is that our brain can change at any age. And if you speak 2 languages, that brain circuit doesn't go down. Our science officer, Dr. Francisco Cedral, actually speaks 6 languages. When we were traveling through India, by the time we were done in 3 weeks, he's speaking Hindi. And I looked at him, I said, Francisco, when did you learn Hindi? He goes, I didn't, I just heard it enough. Because we don't learn, our brain is so incredible. We have 100 billion neural bit processor, and we're teaching it like it's a little droid or something. It's a very powerful supercomputer. And to put it in the perspective of chiropractic care, I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of the high-level chiropractors, and they're really who got me into a lot of what we're doing right now, like Dr. Heidi Havoc, who's with New Zealand Chiropractic College. She's a good friend of mine. And she shows that wherever you adjust in the body, in fact, even when you're doing acupuncture or even using needles, you're actually changing brain function. They've proved that now. It's not, the body is just an extension of the brain, or the brain is an extension of the body. However, there's a symbiotic relationship there. The neat thing about chiropractic is when you do your adjustment, I don't care where you do it, you actually reboot the brain. The whole brain has to reorganize around that adjustment. And then that innate intelligence of the body takes over. And just like we used to do with the old computers, right? If we had an old Microsoft computer and there was a problem, first thing everybody says was just restart it. Well, that's kind of what chiropractors do. They reboot the system so that that organizing principle of our unconscious can take over and get that innate intelligence to bring it back. In the processes, we do a lot with acupuncture because we actually can measure meridians now. We have a device that actually shows meridian points. So we're going to use photobiomodulation in the ears. That's another big word. I'm sorry, we should have said that one too. The photobiom, so we can put it in the ears, because as an acupuncturist, you know that in the ears, you could use seeds, you can use needles, you can use lasers, and you can affect all the parts of the body. From our body is kind of holographic, if you will. People want to think about it that way. So we're going to run energy through the body. And all of that is all about building neuroplasticity, building energy. And our body is designed to collect energy, use energy, and then disperse energy. In fact, the reason we can all see each other right here is we're all sharing what's called biophotons. That's another big word, which means our body actually shares light. It's not a metaphysical concept. We are light beings. Every cell of your body absorbs light and transmits light. That's why we're seen in this world. And we now know that the fascia of the body is actually like fiber optic cabling in the body. So if we can run light through, whether it's lasers, whether it's acupuncture needles, whether it's chiropractic care, we're getting this nervous system back in alignment, because all these things we all know about, our world is just putting us totally out of balance. Stress doesn't just come from our thoughts, right? We all know that on this call, but maybe the listeners might not know that. But the reality is that we're being bombarded by frequencies that our bodies have never experienced. We're being bombarded by foods. I mean, we have frankenfoods that our bodies never intended to digest. I mean, if it comes in a canned bottle and a wrapper.
If I can interrupt real quick, Doc, it kind of makes neuroplasticity work the opposite way, because sometimes people think it was just a positive thing, but you can kind of build up awesome networks and release and empower the brain to just like become the supercomputer, or you can kind of shrink it down. And so we're always talking about unleashing this ultimate human potential. It's really exciting. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I think that you're exactly right, because what happens, Hebb's law, which is something you're kind of talking about there. Hebb's law states that those neurons that fire together tend to wire together. Those neurons that fire apart tend to stay apart. So those bad habits, like when somebody, as we grow older, most people think we're building, like when we grow up, they think we're building our brain. We're actually unplugging our brain. That's what happens in our life. In my first book I wrote was called Awaken the Genius. And I talk about how when we're born, we're fully connected. And then we go about disconnecting ourselves. You know, we lose touch with that. So I think that everything we're doing is trying to get back that connection. Even as far as just being on this call together, we're here to connect, to communicate, connect, and share, and hopefully bring some wisdom and some knowledge, some hope, hopefully to some people out there. And that's in our bodies on a micro level, do the same thing as we do on a macro level.
Yeah, that's great. So you've done an amazing job of tying in what we do to what you're bringing to the table. You know, bringing acupuncture and chiropractic into the world of neuroplasticity, which we, as you said, we all know exists. Tell us a little bit about how BrainTap is doing that directly and why it's so valuable, and then how does it integrate with some of these other therapies in doctors' offices, you know, around the country.
All right. Well, one of the neat things that I get to see a lot, and now Mike sees a lot, is because in our social media channel, a lot of our doctors, we're fortunate to have over 2,000 doctors out there experimenting for us or using it in their clinic, because they're, you know, I can't see everyone. I don't know all the ways it can be used, but we have one person that looks like a porcupine. You know, they have all these needles. I'm not an acupuncturist, but I was looking and going, wow. And then they have the BrainTap on. because what's happening is they open up the meridians. And a lot of people don't understand, like the ears. Some people will listen to the BrainTap and there's lights in the ears. And they go, my ears are hot. Why are they hot? Well, because your meridians are clogged and we need to drive enough energy through. But if you can use the needles, or if you use an adjustment, that's going to free up that neural pathway and get that flow back going, because we can't change structure, right? We only work with what the structure is there. So that's why we like to partner with professionals that do the others, like neurocare and things like that. Because I mean, the real reason it works is every cell of our bodies has something called chromophores. Think of a chromophore like a solar panel. And so it's absorbing light or energy. It could be sound energy too. Most people don't realize that we take in 25,000 pieces of information every second through our ears, and our brain converts that into energy. That's why we hear it as sound. And that energy creates something called ATP. So this ATP production is what happens when we get an adjustment, or we get the alignment with the needles, or when somebody puts the seed in the ear, like to stop smoking, or reduce stress. It's because that meridian needs the flow of energy and information. So what we do is ours works best after you two are done. So you do your work, you create the neuro change. Now we need to get that neurology wiring and firing around what you just did. Because if not, what are your patients going to do? Typically, you're going to walk out and do the same thing they did yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, and they don't get a chance to really set that profound change that happened. In fact, most of them don't even know that. I don't know about acupuncture as much as I do chiropractic, but I do know that they're laying there integrating that change. It's not just like you poke them and you walk away. They're laying there and the body's making those adjustments. With a chiropractor, a lot of them, in fact, D.D. Palmer, actually, I have a picture that I show when I'm doing chiropractic conferences, because he had a machine that actually measured nervous system activity. It was a big machine, like one of the first EEG kind of machines, but he measured energy through the body. And I believe that if he was alive today, he would be a neurosurgeon or something, because he's so knew that everything he was doing was connected to the brain. So we can't do, I don't know if you remember the commercials, the 3M commercials. It says, we don't make the colors, we make them brighter. That's kind of what BrainTap does. It's like we can do certain things to a certain degree, but if they have structural problems or they don't have the ability to, that energy to flow, they're not going to get the change that they need. And one of the books that I wrote with a Dr. Bob Hoffman, it's called Awaken Your Flourishing Brain. And what we did was we took and we did some studies. What happens when a chiropractor does their adjustment? And then we did the BrainTap. Now we're fortunate, our science officer is actually an acupuncturist. So we have one on staff. So we're doing that at the college level too. We show that. So what we're showing is about an 18% bump. Like we might get a 23% neurological improvement from a chiropractic adjustment, which we can measure through that parasympathetic sympathetic balance that happens, the vagal nerve. And we can measure that because everything in the body is vibrating and teeming with energy. Everything has information and energy to it. So now, because of the science that's out there in this, really what they call cellular science, we can measure even down to what's happening from the heart. Maybe the listeners don't know this, but your heart has 40,000 neutrino cells. So these cells, that your heart actually controls the system, not the brain, but your spine is the keyboard to the brain. So all these things work together. So as you work with these systems, but if your heart's not in it, so the first thing we need to do is get their heart in it. And when that happens, it starts communicating with this brain, and then it communicates with the gut. None of these are more important than the others. Some people will say, hey, nutrition's more important. No, it's like a balancing act. You got to do all three. You got to juggle them all.
So like this is a technology just that can be used in the office. And then are there home versions also, or exercises they could do at home to kind of keep their brain exercised?
Yeah, we have, because it comes with an app now. I mean, okay, 4 years ago, we rolled it out into an app. We were just, it was first cassettes, then CDs. Right. Now it's, digital, which is really nice. But so they can do those at home. they can also purchase it. So our doctors, like, let's say you go to Life University, you're familiar with them out of Atlanta, Georgia. They have a neurocenter there. If you go to their neurocenter for 2 weeks, Dr. Mike Longier, who runs it, is one of our docs. You get to go home with a BrainTap. So they do their 2-week intensive, because these are, I sent my wife there after a car accident. They do great work there. So they got her structurally right. And then she brought her BrainTap with her. And then there was a doctor there who was working with her, not Dr. Longier at the time, but it was a female doctor. And then 2 weeks after that, she fell and slipped on her boat, got a concussion. And she didn't tell anybody at the neuro center what she was doing, but she had a BrainTap at home. And she was flying through her therapy, like she was getting results. They're going, wow, you're really getting great results. What do you? She goes, well, at home, I'm doing my BrainTap every night. So then they started finding out, they started bringing it in. And that's when, and I'm very fortunate to travel with some pretty big, important people like Dr. Rob Melillo. I got to travel for a month through Sweden with him, where I learned about primitive reflexes, more than I needed to know, but it was pretty interesting. I did about 8 different seminars on it. I was playing around with it afterwards, probably dangerously, because I'm not really licensed to do that. But once you learn how to activate these, and what we're finding is a lot of the issues we were seeing with brain function were actually these primitive reflexes weren't released, and the BrainTap can't do that. So that's what we're saying is so they can do it, but once they do it, now we have a series that once let's say they get the moral reflex is whatever gets it released. Now we have a session for the moral reflex where we have a vibratory frequency we put into the session, which activates the same thing that the doctor did. So the body remembers it. And we can do it because of frequency medicine or energy medicine, however you want to look at that.
So, Doc, I'm thinking of the body like there's all these nutrients the body thinks, and everyone thinks like when the body needs nutrients, it thinks, oh, vitamin C or GABA or whatever that it is. But it seems like some of the basic nutrients that we forget about are like water, oxygen, and light. And you were talking about that a lot. So what's to keep people from just going, hey, I hear there's light and there's different levels of light here. What's it just keep people going, you know what? I haven't been out in the sun enough. Let's just go out in the sun. How is this different? Because some people might go, oh, that I see there's importance to light. Let me just go out and get some more sun because I haven't been out. Obviously, that is important. We're all buried in our
No, our bodies are designed to be outside 14 to 18 hours a day. So if you can be outside for 14, 18 hours a day, you're fine. But nobody's going to do that. In fact, when I was traveling in India, one of the person who heads up the physiology department at the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences, his name is Dr. Vivek Sharma. He's actually, he studied helotherapy, which is light therapy from the sun. And they now use BrainTap at all the AIMS institutes because we can measure that too. What happens is there's certain frequencies. One thing to know is that there's an infinite number of frequencies, right? We don't know them all, but we exist in a very small band of those frequencies. And inside that band, there's only a small amount of frequencies that are healthy and there's some that are unhealthy, just like you're talking about, you can get the neuroplasticity positive or negative, so what happens is we can condense down that light dosage, just like a laser, you can overdo it. And we're very fortunate. Dr. Sadral was the very first doctor to ever publish a paper on photobiomodulation in the brain. He's our science officer. And he actually wrote the book that's photobiomodulation that the doctor from Harvard wrote. Dr. Sadral wrote the chapter about it. So he's our doctor. So we know how much light, and it's not as much as you think, and you can't get it from our sun. They did a study in New York City. Of course, we know New York is dark all the time, right? Or anywhere north. And they had people go up and try to get 2 hours of sun every day on the top of buildings because they thought, well, they can't get it down below. You can't get enough sun. Our sun is blocked. We don't even get enough sun anywhere in the world right now. And you can get burnt, but you can't get the right vitamin D. Dr. Marcola, which we follow him because he's always on the leading edge. That's why he's not on Google anymore and things like that, but he came out with a light tube. It's an infrared, ultraviolet light. And we did a test with that. It's a different light than BrainTap. But what happens is 5 minutes a day on that, you get all the vitamin D you need. And we had over 200 people go through that program at our office and show you don't need to take vitamin D because vitamin D is actually from light. You can take a supplement if you want, but your body produces it. It's just like sugar. A lot of people don't eat sugar, but they're overweight because if under stress, a stressful event can be can release enough sugar from your liver as if you ate a Snickers bar. So your body produces a lot of these things. When you're talking about GABA, the real reason that our light therapy is different is we're going to mimic a cycle of the sun. And so it's not just light, it's the frequency of light. So it's all tuned to the frequency of the sun. I like to tell people that I've been studying for 30 years, ancient traditions, and made them modern technology. Because this could all be done. You're right. It could all be done naturally. I mean, none of these things need to be done. If we all lived on the island with Gilligan and we had our only decision was Marianne or Ginger, we would, life would be great. But the problem is that we don't get to choose that, right? We have to. There's stresses that are involved. So what happens is as one example, just for the listeners to understand, if you don't get to sleep before 10 o'clock, between 10 and 2 o'clock at night. Let's say you're binge watching and you keep staying up late, your body is never going to produce enough melatonin for you. And the later in the evening you go to sleep after 10 o'clock, the less melatonin your body produces, because that melatonin is triggered from the light from our sun. And people go, well, there's no light, it's dark out. No, there's always light because we have the moon and we have reflective light. And also in the mornings in India, they've shown this, it's actually in their Vedas, their ancient text. The reason that they get up and do yoga at 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning is because it's a natural time for your body to wake up. That's when the cycle starts. But also that's the best time for your body to absorb infrared light, 810 to 860 nanometer light. And if you can get up and do it between those hours, you won't burn. You heard me right. You don't need to use any sunscreen because the light receptors in your body will be filled. That's why the Indians did it. When they were practicing. So they have a lot of science. They've been doing this for 10,000 years. And basically what we're creating, just like Chinese medicine, we're basically recreating it here in America and saying it's new, right. But it's been around forever.
And that's one of the things that I think is so interesting about a product like BrainTap is that you're taking something that has a historical framework where you're saying, hey, these are the elements that we need to stay healthy. And now we're putting it into modern day science. And one of the things that we haven't even mentioned yet, as it relates to BrainTap, is actually what it is. So it's a headset that you put on, and you're getting these light flashes, and you're getting sounds in your ears, but you're also getting a guided meditation on most of the tracks that you do. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting about it is you're hitting multiple senses. And you're affecting neuroplasticity not just by the light that we've been spending some time talking about, which could be hours we could spend on this, but also the sound, the vibration, and then this kind of guided meditation, which settles your nervous system as well. So is there anything that I'm missing as far as the other elements that you brought into BrainTap besides the sound, the light flashing in the eyes, and the guided meditation? Is there anything else that you consider an essential part of the process?
No, I think you've got it. I think that we want to circle back to one of the other big words that Todd brought up at the beginning, epigenetics. Okay, so we know, when I talked about biophotons before, they now know in science that 99% of junk DNA that we heard about, when they mapped the genome, and really they mapped 1% of it, which I don't know about you, but if I passed a test, I wouldn't pass a test if I only answered 1% of the questions. But that's what they did. And they said, hey, they mapped it. That's because that other 99% of who we are changes every 40 seconds. We are never the same person. It's like the mystic said, when we wake up in the morning, we step into a new person every day. But really now science tells us we step into a new person every 40 seconds. We're never the same person. And those biophotons are part of the equation that changes our gene expression. And so that happens by everything, but the main things, of course, are the foods we consume, the water we drink, the sunlight, the light we're exposed to, the kind of therapies we're in. The sound therapy, when people wonder, why do we use sound therapy? We know that sounds, and that involves the tones, the frequencies, and well as the words, those can change up to 2,300 gene expressions that can be measured. So in what we're saying is we're going to shut off those negative ones. We never use negative psychology. Like I went to Catholic school, so I'm really good at that, but I don't use that here. We use positive psychology. We want to instruct the body to do good things, and we want to have and when he talked about GABA, the only way that your body produces these neurotransmitters we need is to go through these full brainwave cycles. So we're using light, sound, and vibration to actually entrain. Entrainment is a part of physics. Okay, so people think of it as a metaphysical, but it's really a physics thing. If we were together, like we've all been outside and we hear the crickets start, right? And pretty soon the crickets start having an orchestra. That's because nature itself is always synchronicity. There's a great video on YouTube where they take metronomes and they start 200 of them at all different times. And within 4 minutes, they're synchronized. They've done the same thing with grandfather clocks. Well, what we found out is we can do the same thing with human brains, but it takes about 4 minutes. So at the very beginning of every BrainTap session, we're training the brain in different ways. Now, where that neuroplasticity comes in, it always has to be different. That's why when we're doing therapy with people, it's really important that we change it up, just like working out. I mean, if we go to the gym and we do the same workouts, pretty soon the muscles atrophy and they don't grow and expand. We learn best through challenges, and really stress is a good thing when it comes to, building our brain, building our body, building our resilience, and nowadays building our immunity. That's the sad part about being in our homes. It's not going to help our immunity any. It's actually going to make it worse when we get back out into the communities and things like that.
It's an interesting thing you brought up, the brain waves. And so, in addition to the sound tones and the light flashing, and then these tracks that range between, let's say, 10 and 20 to 30 minutes that you're doing, and there's hundreds of tracks on BrainTap that you can listen to. So you can pop in and then like constantly change it, which helps you break through the barriers of getting from one brainwave to the next. And traditionally, when we talk about meditation, one of the things the way that we couch it is we talk about the going from gross to subtle to causal to formless. That's kind of the traditional way that we've talked about meditation in study, right? And most of the time, it's just repetition. The only way to get from gross to subtle is to sit for another 5 years. And the only way to get from subtle to causal is to sit for another 10 years. And the only way to get from, right? So talk about how this speeds that process up. And also, what would you say, if I can just do a follow-up question to that, what would you say to those traditionalists that say, hey, this is a spiritual practice, and the idea is that we're trying to become one with, and this formless self, and now we're taking it down into a scientific kind of stress relieving toy. So what would you say to those people? Because I use it every day. I think it's fantastic, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I think that you're exactly right. All of this can be done without the BrainTap, but the problem is we don't have 30 years to get there. And what's really interesting, like Dr. Varun, who heads up the physiology department in Bhopal, India, he's a guru. He uses the BrainTap every day. Mm-hmm. And it's so cool to see him using it, because what we did was we measured people that think they meditate. And I'm going to blow some people's minds because they're not going to believe me, but I only have a handful of people that don't stress their brain out when they meditate. They haven't done it long enough. And I was very fortunate. I studied with Yogi Bhajan for 5 years in Phoenix. And because I was younger then, and I did Kundalini yoga. I still do a lot of the pranayamas and the stretches and things like that. And I think that's a really good way. And you get some trips. I mean, if you do that, the psychedelic breathing, or that kind of, you go on some journeys. And what happened when I first discovered the light part of the therapy, which was at an experience in Vegas at a trade show with a big machine called the SILS, Sensory Imprint Learning System. And I became a part of that team, and we created the first portable light and sound machine. I went on a trip. Like I had never done acid, but they tell me that was probably what it was like, or psilocybin or whatever. I had an out-of-body experience I couldn't believe. And I said, wow, I got to have that machine. And they said, well, you're lucky. It's only $10,000. And I'm like, what? So I had to work for the company. I couldn't afford $10,000 then, I had just graduated. But what I tell people is, if you have a practice, continue to do your practice. But when you do BrainTap, what'll happen is you'll go deeper now in your practice, because we can take you to, I liken it to going on vacation. I can take you with me to Hawaii and you can have the experience of the rainbows and the waterfalls. And that's pretty cool. Or I can just tell you about it. It's better if I take you there, right? BrainTap's going to take you there. Now, what you do there, you still have to, it's not going to make, there's one of my books that hasn't been printed yet, but I have the cover done. It's a bunny rabbit who looks like a guru. He's cross-legged, and it says cosmic quick consciousness, 2 scoops to instant enlightenment, because that's what people want. They want instant enlightenment. They want to, and the reality is that when we think of a Jyoti meditation, which is a candle meditation, right? Where you're looking at a candle and it's flickering and your breath just kind of moves the candle a little bit. That was the inspiration to the very first BrainTap, because that's a technology. Incense is a technology. Now we can use, I use doTERRA, but you can use any kind of oils you want. You know, we can use oils to take us there. Just boom, that goes right to your brain, right? And causes your brain to change. So we've always used technology. What did the gurus do? We always see them on the mountains, right? They're always meditating on the mountains. Well, they're using an isochronic tone generator called the Earth, and it resonates at 7.8 hertz frequency when you're in the mountains. So they're cheating. They're sitting in a cave, meditating. What do you mean? Every generation has its own technology. And so we just happen to be, pretty soon we'll have our babies will be born into full spectrum light chambers, and they'll be healthier when they're born. They won't be subject to fluorescent lights slapped on the rear and say, hey, welcome to Earth. You know, this is stress, you know, welcome aboard. You know, we don't treat people very well, even from the very beginning. You know, so I think that, you know, it'd be better if we were born in lagoons in Hawaii and there are dolphins swimming around and people were chanting and beating on, you know, having a drum circle when they're born, and everybody says, wow, this is the one we've been waiting for. It's not Neo, you know, this is the one. You know, that's because we all have that. So my thought is, we're all here by divine appointment. And you have a genius. You have, and when I mean genius, is Roman mythology coined the word genius. What they said was every one of us has talents and skills, and it's all ran by our genie. And if we use that genie and we use our talents and skills, they consider us geniuses. So we all have talents and skills. How are you going to use them? For me, I did it for myself. I was a screwed up kid. You know, I didn't know what to do. I mean, my dad was an alcoholic. I had no good examples, you know. And so, but when I started meditating, and we didn't have the technology we have now, but we did use technology-driven meditation called the Silva sound. Now I know it to be isochronic tones, but I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that when I listened to it, that stress went away. I didn't even know what stress was. I was 12 years old. I was angry. I was upset. So we need to get people out of that sympathetic overload and get them into parasympathetics. And that's what we can do. Now, enlightenment is up to a higher power, you know, but I think we're all on that path. We only have one way to go, and you can take the long way or you can take the short way, you know, so that's where we're at.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, what I get the sense of is that BrainTap is speeding up the process of being in a gross meditation or a body type meditation, where you're just trying to calm your nervous system, through to the subtle, where you increase your own creativity and you start to kind of open up your mind to the causal, even, which is kind of the deep sleep and the regenerative aspect of deep sleep. It's taking you at least through those 3 phases much faster than, you know, the jump from deep sleep to oneness with the universe is on you. You know, so.
Right. But there's you know who Greg Braden is? Have you ever watched anything with him? Mm-mm. Or JJ Hertag? He talks about our genome and our body. Actually, they have found this. This is true science now. Our body, when our genome is broken down into new numbers, like something called numerology, actually it says in our genes, at the end of every gene expression, it says God in the body. We need to wake up that God in the body. And so what I did is I took Jim Hertag's chants and I listen to myself. You want to get a buzz, like a natural high, and I'm talking to JJ because I haven't seen him in years, but he just came out with this new CD with Stephen Halperin. And so I encoded it for myself, and I sent it to him, and I said, JJ, I want to be able to put this on the network. I mean, this is awesome, because I think you can with chants or with, and that we also have some spiritual ones. My background is Christian psychology. So we have some that I just think that there's a spiritual part of us all that we have to activate. And I don't care what you call it, it's there. And we need to germinate. That seed just needs a little germination, and we do that through whether it's prayer, meditation, getting out in nature, some way getting outside ourselves where we realize there's some bigger force or power that's helping us out here. It's not just our little minds running around here controlling the universe.
Dr. Porter, I wanted to also ask you, if you don't mind, just bring the headset a little bit closer to the camera so people who have no idea how BrainTap looks like, they can experience it at least on camera and see it. And I want to let people know that the usage of BrainTap becomes super, super easy because it's an app. You can use it even without the headset. And then when Dr. Porter is going to show you the headset, it looks kind of like this RoboCop looking type of
This one's been sitting there on, so the battery's dead. so usually I have it charged up, but I didn't know we were going to do that. So when you look at here, there's lights that come on here, and those lights, these LEDs, there's 8 LEDs, and it's not a lot of millijoules or whatever. It's not a lot, and it's blue light. It's 470 nanometer light, so it doesn't penetrate the eyes. But when your eyes are closed, it's actually triggering cranial nerve number 2. So what happens is that default network that we have, some people call it the reticular activating system, it's scanning our environment. It's saying, what the heck is that? And then the brain lights up. And what's really cool is when you have these, whether it be the Wavi or NeuroInfinity or these other devices we have, or something called the New Mind, you can measure EEG on the fly, and you watch the brain light up. So what we're doing is whatever's happening in the right eye is happening in the left ear. And we're basically crossing over that corpus callosum to get that neural network to build back up, to reconnect. Now there's lights in the ears that you can't see here, but if they go online, they can watch a video, and we have a whole video that shows it. That's the light. That light is actually generating a Noget frequency. Dr. Noget, which is a lot of acupuncturists use a lot of his technology. What we did is we have a light pad that actually cycles through the 7 frequencies because they're all needed in the body. We took the one that has to do with the nervous system, and we pulsed that into the system. And we did that we first experimented with autistic kids because they didn't understand what we were doing, and we couldn't get them to calm down. But if we want to calm down the nervous system, we need to get them out of that low-level chronic stress and turn on the parasympathetic system. So Dr. Noget already did the work. So we just looked at his research and we said, okay, let's do it with light. So we're pulsating that light 187 times to 192 times every second. It looks like it's solid, but it isn't. It's actually most people have seen the movie Rain Man, or where they see where he drops the matches or toothpicks on the ground. Can't remember which one they were, and he knows how many they are, right? Believe it or not, we all do that. Just like our eyes take in 2,000 pieces of information every second, but we only act on 40 of them. Our ears, 25,000, and we only act on between 40 and 50. So our brain is filtering out everything, but it doesn't mean it's not processing it. Our brain is processing everything. So what we're doing is we're going to use this light, sound, and vibration, and it's an immersion technique. So we're immersing them in this experience. There's no escaping it, but it's pleasant. It takes them into a super state because we're stressing them out, really, but it's a good stress. It's like, if you like to play golf, that's a good stress. If you don't like to play golf, it's miserable, right? Because you're hitting this little white ball around the course. You're like, what are you doing this for? But if you like it, it's incredible. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to and we really designed this headset. It wasn't a headset at first. It was a pair of eyeglasses that had lights in it, and you used other earphones. But we did it because of pain. Pain in the body only is experienced in one brainwave state. That's the state of beta. That happens to be high sympathetic. And the more beta you have, the more pain you'll have. So if we want to bring the pain down, now that doesn't fix their hardware. That's what you guys are for. But what we can do is we can take that pain away. And it can be a short term, but I tell people don't use this to take your pain away without going to get treatment, because pain is a signal to the body saying something's wrong. Now, sometimes, like myself, I had a shoulder surgery where they took a piece of my collarbone and put it over here. I used nothing but my mind, no anesthetic. So I woke up in the middle of the surgery and I'm seeing these big saws and everything. And my dad was in the room. He said, just close your eyes, go back to sleep. I went back to sleep, but I remembered it. But as long as I was asleep, I had no pain. And he conditioned me to be able to go in. And I used the words white was conditioned. So all I do is say the words white, boom. Because when your brain sees the color white, have you ever been hit in the head? You see this flash of white light? That's because you just triggered the morphine receptors in your brain. Your brain, before you can even think about it, and you see it as the color white. So you can trigger that consciously. So we first developed this for pain clinics. And we've done so many studies on pain and eliminating pain. And that's one of the ways we got in with Carl Parker, with Parker University, when we started doing work with him back, 2006, when we started working with him.
Very, very impressive. And I know that people will have a lot of questions, and we can talk for a long period of time to try to explain to people what it is. Sometimes you just have to experience it to really know what's going on and how to use it. It's the easiest possible thing that you can imagine, because you just put the headset on, or if you don't have the headset, you can just click on the link that you have either in the comments or in the post description. Try the app. Even with just your headphones, all you do is you just let it do the work. You don't have to do anything actively. And it's something magical that is pretty hard to explain. What I would like to do is just encourage everyone, whether you're on the patient side or the provider side, ask questions in comments, because you may have a lot of questions. You may have something that you are curious if that's a good application, if you are a provider. Also, I would like just one question to Dr. Porter. If you could tell our providers how easy it is to actually implement it, because as you know, nobody has time and nobody wants to have inventory of new type of equipment, being not sure if that's something that is going to work for their patients. So for those people, tell our viewers on the provider side how easy it is to actually implement it in their clinics.
Sure. Most of our providers actually set it up and their clients actually run it once they show them how to do it, because most everybody knows how to run an app now. They all have smartphones. So we have this is, I don't know if you can see this. This is on here, but I can put my tablet on here and it's sitting there beside the chair, a zero gravity chair. The person comes in, picks out the session they want to listen to, boom, puts the headset on, clicks it on and goes. Now, most people at first, of course, they'll have one of their staff doing it, whether it's their front desk administrator or somebody running it. We have a clinic in St. Louis right now where he has 20 chairs and he has 10 whole body vibrations where you stand on them and you vibrate the lymphatic system. And because what we do is we're going to liberate a lot of toxins. Light does that. So he uses the lymph system to get that out of he uses the vibration to get it out. And 2 people run that station, and he sees about 2,000 people a week through that clinic. Wow. And he does pretty good business. He sells a membership model. They come in, they pay like $200 a month and they can come in and use it whenever they want. But most of our doctors have it with care. So there might be weight loss or stop smoking or stress reduction or pain free, or we have a lot of women's clinics that use it, even hospitals, because we have Mind Over Menopause, which we have in a woman's voice. So if they're wondering, we also have it in my voice, but of course they don't want to listen to a man when they're going through that. So we have it in a female voice, but so what happens is the person who comes into the clinic, they start to use it typically after a session. Now, some doctors use it before. So it's really up to them. You know, if they're really stressed out and like some doctors, because they can't make the adjustment because they're so tight and tense, we can get those muscles to relax a little bit. And then like with acupuncture, most of them do it at the same time. They'll set them up with all the needles and then they put the headset on and they just run the energy through the system that way. That's typically the way they do it. And it's so simple to use. I tell people it's press play to change, you know, and I will say, I wish we had sold more headsets. We do really well. We sell in 120 countries, but I would say probably 70% of our people just use the app because it's affordable and it's easy to deliver. And around the world, it's hard to ship everything, you know, to different places. So the app is very effective. It's just And I was going to say, like with music therapy, you were saying something about that. We've done tests with just music, and then we took music and we encoded it, not words, just music, because music therapy is really good. And what we found was after 6 weeks, they both get to the same place. It's just BrainTap got there really quick. Like you can only improve so much. Like when you get the body functioning, we like to get the body functioning at 80 to 90% neurologically normal. And we can measure that. So we have a standard if we keep them in therapy that long. And then it's like brushing your teeth. If you want to keep them cavity free, you got to keep brushing your teeth. If you want to keep your brain working, you got to keep doing something. It doesn't have to be BrainTap, but you got to do something to maintenance your stress and keep your brain going.
Thank you, first of all, Dr. Porter, for bringing a little bit more light, no pun intended, to BrainTap, so people can understand a little bit more about the science behind it, about the technology, and most importantly, how they can actually apply it. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Dr. Todd. You are amazing people, and you are also representing a group of a lot of other providers who may have similar questions. So I think we're going to have some activity coming after the video gets published. So we encourage everyone to comment below if you have any questions, if you want to connect with other practitioners, maybe ask somebody else who is already using BrainTap how they're implementing it. We want to provide a very easy way for you to collaborate, and we wish you a very good evening and good night.